له يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى أنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's headlines. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini kicks off an official visit to Lebanon and holds talks with Prime Minister Tamam Slam and Foreign Minister Gibran Bassil. The Economy, Health and Agriculture ministers say they will join efforts to contain a possible wheat crisis amid fears of carcinogenic contamination. The U.S. President Barack Obama hails his trip to Cuba as a historic opportunity, being the first U.S. leader to visit the state in almost 9 decades. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini has kicked off an official visit to Lebanon by holding talks with Prime Minister Tamam Slam and Foreign Minister Gibran Bassil, with the Syrian refugee crisis at the heart of discussions. Bassil emphasized that Lebanon's constitution prohibits the naturalization of Syrian refugees. During a joint press conference with the EU official, he highlighted the need to reach a political solution to the crisis in Syria in order to ease the refugee burden. For her part, Mogherini said Bassil also touched on the growing threat of terrorism in the region and the world, with the minister stressing the need to exert more efforts to confront this danger. During her one-day trip, Mogherini will visit a Syrian refugee informal settlement and a public school in the eastern Bekaa town of Barlies. She is scheduled to hold a press conference later in the day at the delegation of the EU in Beirut.
We also discussed the upcoming tracks of bilateral cooperation to face the common challenge of the mass influx of Syrians into our territory at times where the EU is confronted with a migration crisis. Here we reiterated Lebanon's gratitude to the European Union for being the biggest humanitarian donor. And we agreed that only a political solution can pave the way for the rebirth of a united, non-sectarian Syria, where the Syrians themselves decide on the nature of their governing system as well as choose their leadership. Such a solution can put an end to the refugee crisis and provide a safe return for the refugees and their contribution in the reconstruction of Syria.
Second, we are together working for peace in Syria. We have a vital interest, both of us, have a vital interest in making the cessation of hostilities that has started continue, consolidate and expand. We have a vital common interest in making sure that humanitarian access for delivering aid inside even largest parts of Syria increases, and we have a vital common interest in making sure that the political process that is starting now in Geneva can be accompanied by all the regional and international actors in a constructive way, and that the Syrian parties themselves find the necessary political space to build a political process for the country that can put an end to the war, that can unite forces against Daesh, and can create peace and security for the Syrian refugees that are currently in Lebanon, but also in Jordan, in Turkey, in Europe, in many other parts of the world, to have the conditions to safely go back to their countries. This is going to be a difficult process, a long process, but a process in which we all have an interest, first and foremost, the Syrian people. And I believe this is our common understanding, our starting point. Third, we have a common interest, Lebanon and the European Union, in having effective counter-terrorism activities and dialogues in the region and the expanded region. We've had fruitful counter-terrorism dialogue not long ago, and I think that the sequence of the dates of the terrorist attacks in November tell us very clearly. The terrorist attack in Beirut was just the day before the terrorist attack in Paris. And we were all thinking that days that we are together in this. And there are no boundaries, that there are no divisions in this. There is a common effort to prevent radicalization, to fight terrorist organizations, and to create the political conditions in Syria in particular to make sure that all forces can be united against Daesh and Nusra and the other terrorist groups that are operating there, with connections to the broader region and to Europe.
The economy, health and agricultural ministers have announced they will work together to contain a possible wheat crisis after studies released last week showed high levels of carcinogenic contamination. In a joint press conference, Agriculture Minister Akram Shayib said a team of experts from the three ministries will design and implement a plan to guarantee the safety and quality of imported wheat. Today's conference comes on the heels of a public dispute between the health and economy ministers after the latter refuted studies presented by Abu Fahour that there is an alarming presence of contaminated wheat at the port. He also claimed ministerial jurisdiction over the matter and declared that his ministry's tests demonstrated otherwise. In a press conference last week, Abu Fahour called for a temporary ban on wheat imports, stating that wheat samples collected at Lebanese ports had high levels of the potential carcinogen ochra toxin. Saudi ambassador to Lebanon, Ali Awad Asiri, says his country will always be the best destination for Lebanese businessmen, assuring that it will keep its doors open for them and further investments. He called on businessmen to engage in projects in Saudi Arabia because it is profitable investment, as Lebanon only means well for the kingdom. The ambassador added, quote, "The reasons behind the latest political dispute with Lebanon are known, and what happened is not worthy of the historical relationship between the two countries." Relations between Riyadh and Lebanon deteriorated in February when Saudi Arabia halted a grant to the army in protest against Hezbollah's virulent criticism of the kingdom, and Foreign Minister Gibran Basil's abstention from voting in favor of Arab League resolutions condemning attacks against the Saudi embassy in Iran in January. The families of 9 Lebanese servicemen held hostage by the Islamic State have blocked the road between the northeastern border towns of Labou and Arsal to protest their sons' continued captivity. The relatives said they held their protest on the occasion of Mother's Day to shed light on their suffering. The protesters issued a statement appealing for mercy for the mothers of the captives and called for the people's support to bring the hostages back home. The soldiers and policemen remain in captivity since August of 2014, when jihadists from ISIS and the Nusra Front overran Arsal and kidnapped the man following bloody clashes with the Lebanese army. At least 26 pro-government fighters were killed battling ISIS near Palmyra as Damascus stepped up a bid to recapture the ancient city. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says warplanes believed to be Russian struck parts of Palmyra city and its surroundings in the east of Homs province. ISIS seized Palmyra, a UNESCO World Heritage Site known as the Pearl of the Desert, in May last year, sending shock waves around the world. The Arab League has rejected last week's declaration by Syrian Kurds of a de facto federal region in northern Syria. The League's deputy chief, Ahmed bin Heli, said calls for federalization could impact Syria's unity. Last Thursday, a meeting of some 200 Kurdish officials declared they were establishing a federal region. The officials insisted they were not seeking secession, but rather making sure the country remains one nation. In Syria's civil war, Kurdish fighters have emerged as the most effective fighting force against the Islamic State group and are backed militarily by the United States. Extreme bleaching causes the death of large amounts of coral on Australia's iconic Great Barrier Reef. That's coming up next. Welcome back. You're watching the English newscast. U.S. President Barack Obama has called his trip to Cuba a historic opportunity in his first comments after becoming the first serving U.S. leader to visit the state in almost 9 decades. The 3-day visit marks the culmination of a thaw in relations between Washington and the communist island that began in December of 2014. Obama arrived in Havana on Sunday evening with his wife and daughters and is due to meet Cuban President Raul Castro later today. Extreme bleaching has caused the death of large amounts of coral on Australia's iconic Great Barrier Reef, prompting the government to implement its highest response level to help tackle the crisis. New diver surveys conducted off Cape York, Australia's remote far northeastern tip, found up to 50% coral mortality because of coral bleaching caused by rising sea temperatures. The Great Barrier Reef, comprising nearly 3,000 reefs and 900 islands and stretching 2,000 kilometers along Australia's northeast coast, is considered the world's largest living structure. More than $3 billion is generated each year from the reef's tourism industry. A wild elephant has killed a man by throwing him to the ground and then trampling on him after it strayed into a village in India's eastern West Bengal state. 2 elephants strayed into the village of Burdwan district after being separated from their herd. They damaged paddy crops in a nearby field, and one of them flung the man in the air and trampled him to death. Villagers and forest officials failed to calm the animal. And today we end our bulletin with a trailer on the occasion of Mother's Day. Enjoy.
Hello, Atlanta. Happy Mother's Day. Hey, you know no junk food for breakfast.
Dad lets us.
He also lets you go to school without any underwear.
It's called free balling, Mom.
Sandy is a single mom.
Her ex just got remarried to like a 12-year-old.
Hi, Sandy. Hi. I'm here for a job.
Tell me more about this tween and your ex-husband.
I'm sure I exaggerated. I'll have a better idea once all the acne clears up.
Bradley is Mr. Mom.
Did you go to the supermarket?
What do we need?
Juice, eggs,
Eggs?
and tampons.
What was that?
Tampons.
I'm just gonna write T. I don't know what that means.
Need a price check on organic.
No, that's not necessary.
Daughter?
Yeah, 2.
Same boat, 2 sons.
It's nice meeting you. Sandy with 2 sons.
Jessie never sees her mom.
It's just all this Mother's Day stuff, and I start thinking about how I haven't talked to Mom.
Hi.
Oh, I have to say, Jess,
You haven't aged that much.
Thank you.
I will run to the river.
Doors open! You guys are supposed to be in Texas.
we've been driving 20 hours straight.
Where's the little lady's room? I gotta drain the lizard.
Thank you for sharing down the hall.
I can't take him anywhere.
Yeah.
Kristen never met her mom.
I was adopted. I've always wondered, did she just throw me away?
What you have to do, you have to find your mother.
Do you have kids?
Career keeps me busy. Who shall I make it out to?
This April,
I'm 16. I have a life.
Wait, where are you going? Rachel, get out of the car.
celebrate the one day
No matter what's happened between us, you're always my mother.
that connects us all.
We're not who the world thinks we are. We decide who we are, when we want, and who we want to know.
Out on the verge of the rest of our lives tonight. Out on the verge of the rest of our lives.
Dad! Are you okay, Dad?
Happy Mother's Day.
Mother's Day.
Tanner, no. Oh.
It's like the 4th time he's done this.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini kicks off an official visit to Lebanon and holds talks with Prime Minister Tamam Slam and Foreign Minister Gibran Bassil. The economy, health and agriculture ministers say they will join efforts to contain a possible wheat crisis amid fears of carcinogenic contamination. U.S. President Barack Obama hails his trip to Cuba as a historic opportunity, being the first U.S. leader to visit the state in almost 9 decades. Those are your top stories for today. I'm Linda Tamim, and I wish every mother watching a very happy Mother's Day.
بقول له يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى إنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.